everyone, and welcome to Behind the Mic Radio. I'm your host, Dawn Mack. So very glad to have you here with us today, and I'm pleased to be here with you as well. It is a special day and time for our show. We're not normally on Saturdays at 4 p.m., but today we wanted to bring to you a very special guest that truly inspired and touched my heart, and I'm telling you, by the end of this interview, you will also be touched, moved, and changed by her story and just the wonderful way she presents it. To give you a little background on our guest, she is a critically acclaimed playwright. She's a performer, and she is also the author and writer of an autobiographical one-woman show called Listen, Can You Hear Me Now? And it was conceived by Peter Flint, directed by Michael Leoni, and further developed by Matt Hoverman's Create Your Own Solo Show Workshop, which runs through August 24th at Venue 18 at the Steve Marie Sgouros Theatre. It's an 11-11 experiment show. It's received much critical acclaim and praise thus far. And to give you a little background, the show is based around her being an outsider in her home where telephones and doorbells set off flashing lights, and she becomes the world's first lip syncer. She was the vigilant listener, the one to sort out all the sounds, let her parents know what was happening at all times, and be their connection to the hearing world. She was the sole interpreter for deaf parents, and through this show, Listen, Can You Hear Me Now?, she shares the daring, funny, eye-opening story of finding her own voice. The New York International Fringe Festival is the largest multi-arts festival in North America, with more than 200 companies from all over the world performing in 16 days in more than 20 venues. And before we get into our interview with our guest for today, I wanted to play a clip, about a 2-minute clip from the show that kind of gives you a little bit of a background and a taste of what the show is all about. And if you're in New York this weekend or through the 24th, you definitely want to get out to see it. I wish I lived closer. I would definitely take it in. But our special guest today is Gloria Rosen. We're so very proud and pleased and honored to have her with us. And now I'm going to share with you a clip from that, and then we will launch into the interview.
Gloria, get Daddy. Somebody's at the door. Somebody's at the door. Someone's at the door.
Daniel, get Daddy. It's raining. Tell him close the windows.
Gloria, you here? What? Listen, what?
That's the question I'm asked over and over. But my mother who's deaf, my father who's deaf, both parents deaf. I am the listener. It's my job to let them know everything that's going on in the house. Now in our house, the phone doesn't just ring. My parents know someone's calling by the lights flashing in every room in the house. They go on and off and on and off and on and off. And there are different lights for the doorbell, and sometimes all the lights.
Hello, this is Jaime. Where's the sheetrock? I can't find it.
Hi, for God's sake. Why are you gonna marry with that deaf boy? How are you gonna raise 2 caring children? Mrs. Rosen, I'm Jewish. Now she's in heaven. She thinks he'd be just the right boyfriend for me. Never mind I'm old enough to be his mother, and never mind he already has a boyfriend. Patience is death. My father may have been the king of the castle, but he was also the baby of the family. It was my job to make sure that things were right for him. But he had no idea how to make things right for me, and he couldn't protect me. And I'm hiding behind the chair, and I'm convinced that he's just going to kill us. He's not hearing me. I don't know. I don't feel safe here. I start out trying to get them to listen to me. But the reality is, I'm here to listen and to speak for them.
All right, we want to welcome you to our program, and thank you so much for being our special guest today, Gloria.
Well, thank you very, very much for having me. I appreciate this very much. Me and my show and my team and everybody else.
Well, thank you. It is quite an honor to have you here, and I want to first begin by congratulating you on the vast critical acclaim and huge reception that Listen, Can You Hear Me Now has received. It's just been amazing.
It's amazing to me as well, and I'm just so really, really grateful for how kindly it has been received. Because this is a subject that no one really knows about, and I was never really sure how this was going to go. But it's amazing what has happened, and I'm very, very grateful for it.
Well, it is really quite amazing how, it's really brilliant, actually, how you've taken a subject matter that I'm sure, you're not alone in, and have been able to kind of put it out there so people can kind of see with their own eyes and hear with their own ears, if you will, and be able to really identify in ways that, to say, hey, I'm not alone. There are others out there that are dealing with this as well.
Yes, and as we know, this goes beyond the deaf and hearing issue. This is a more universal issue. So there's ramifications of this that go beyond a specific circumstance, and I think that is what people are relating to.
Definitely. And describe for us, if you will, a little bit about the show without giving anything away.
Oh, thank you for saying that. This actually is the my own story, my personal story of growing up as a hearing child, and pretty much the sole interpreter for my deaf parents. And this is a unique situation because most CODAs that I know, and CODAs are children of deaf adults, are taught to sign. So even though the issue remains of it still being two separate worlds, signing to your parents gives you a language of that somebody said to me was emotional safety. It is emotional safety to speak the same language as your parents, and when you don't, you really don't have that. And my mother did not allow us to sign. So I did not speak what is basically the primary language of certainly my father. And so during the course of the performance, this is what's kind of fun about it, because I played like 26 different people. Because in a solo show, you can't just do an hour monologue. It just gets tedious, and it's boring for the actor. You don't want to stand up there and just, be all by yourself. So you just bring in everybody with you. So there's a small sample of, I play my Jewish grandmother, a little puppet head, both of my parents, a frustrated actor, relay operator, a very, very liberating best friend, a loudmouth aunt, and a clueless social worker, and a whole bunch of other people. So, and what's really nice is that the liberating best friend now lives in Mexico, and she has come up here this weekend to see the show.
Oh,
which
wow.
Is just a wonderful thing for me, because she was the one who really got me out of the house, and it was just an amazing adventure that we had, and all of that is in the show. And everybody loves her because she's the one who really got me out of the house. So to have her there is very, very special. She came Thursday night. She came last night with her son and his wife and their daughter, and she's coming back on Sunday with another son and a wife and a daughter. So it's been really wonderful.
Oh, that has to be incredibly meaningful for you to have her there, knowing that she is part of your show. And what has her reaction been to you to see, your portrayal of her in this?
Oh, she loves it. I mean, I was told that because I can't see them, I can't see them in the audience, but Suzanne, my publicist, was there, and there was somebody else as well who said that when I was portraying Judy, she and her son were just losing it in the audience because they were just and her son said, "Yep, that's her. That's her. That's her." You bet.
What an honor for her to have you do that, and what an honor for you to have her there to support you in this, and for a project that is just so incredibly, personal for you. And well, one of the things I was curious about, because this is basically based in large part on your personal experiences with this, and did you find working on this project to be challenging for you at all?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's a yes. I think that's 4 yeses I just said. When this was first proposed to me, I was working with a really, really wonderful acting coach and a mentor to me. His name was Peter Flint. And I had started working with him privately, and at the time I started working with him, my father and my brother had already passed away. So it was just myself and my mother. And as any daughter-mother combination out there knows, it's a challenging combination, mother and daughter.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, my mother and I were always we had little fights, when I would go visit her. And she looked at me one day and she said, well, I'm not used to having a roommate. She says, I'm used to your father, and your father said yes to anything I wanted. Didn't matter if I was right or wrong. You always said yes. And apparently I did not always say yes to her. But I would tell these stories to my acting coach. I would just come back and just tell him, and he would just be hysterical. And then he finally said to me one day, you have to write this down, which other people had said, off and on through the years. And I said, no, I don't need to do that. No, because I never talked about this. I never really talked about my family. No one understood. Deaf parents. There was just no common ground to discuss this, so I didn't even try. And I said, no one's going to be interested in this, and I can't believe, no, I don't want to do this. And everything in my house was a secret. So you just didn't talk about this. You didn't talk about anything. It took him a couple of years to convince me to go ahead and do this. And I just did it because he mentored it. He says, I'm going to mentor this. You just come in. I'm going to ask you. And I said, listen, I don't remember. I'm telling you a couple of funny stories, but I don't really remember all that much. But he would ask me questions, and I said, oh, yeah, okay, I'll go write about that. And I would go home and write about it. And I said, okay, that's it. I don't remember anything else. And then he asked me something else. I said, oh, yeah. And then it started like a chain reaction. And everything sort of opened up. And I was asked to produce, somebody wanted to produce some shows that I was doing in a workshop with some other people. And that was 2007. And I presented 20 minutes of it in a little black box. And I've been doing it ever since, and it just kept growing. And I lost my mentor this year, and Michael Leoni, who was also a protege of his and is now my director, has taken it over, is directing it, and we have really reshaped the script because Michael asks me questions, too, that I never know the answer to until I start thinking about it. And it's been very, very helpful. And now I feel we have a really solid script, and I'm very happy with it. Just in time, for the New York Fringe, we've just got something together. So that's just kind of a long answer to that question. I apologize, but yes, it was a challenge. It was a challenge.
That is.
In fact, I'm sorry, I shouldn't interrupt you, but go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. Sorry. I was just going to say that's a great answer because it helps. It helps to kind of helps us to understand, kind of some of the things that you encountered as you were, preparing to work on this project. And that kind of leads me to another question is, as you were writing this and recounting the many memories of your experiences, did you find that to be helpful? Did you find it to be therapeutic as you were able to kind of just, rehash, if you will, some of those things that are, I know you said that some of your earlier memories that you spoke about were not stuff you really, truly remembered in full, but as you began to work on this, did it just kind of all start flooding back and coming back to you in depth?
Yes, and there were people that actually helped me fill it out. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who's known me for over 40 years, and she said, I didn't know certain things that you said in that show, but she had memories that I didn't have. There was one time my mother was very angry with me, and this woman lived right next door to me. And, New York apartments, that the walls are like paper, so you can hear each other's sneeze. And she said, I remember that day your mother came over. She yelled at you all day. And I said, I don't remember that. I don't remember. And she gave me that piece of it. And Judy, this woman who's in my show, told me a few things that I had not remembered. So it's been amazing what people, around me have retained that I just pushed away. So, yes, it eventually, I sort of resisted the idea of it being like therapeutic because I never wanted this show to look like therapy on stage. That is the trap of a solo show. You never want to do that. You just want to entertain and have a good time and have everybody have a good time. But underneath it all, you bet, it has been. It has been.
That's wonderful. This show is not just about your personal experience with having two deaf parents and dealing with that, but it's about something so much more. I mean, I imagine for you there were probably many times, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but it just seems like there were probably many times that you felt like you were an outsider, you were alone, and that maybe, gosh, no one's going to understand this. There's no way anyone could begin to understand what I deal with day in, day out. So what are some takeaways that you hope, the audience will come away with after seeing your show?
Well, as on the surface, I said this, on the surface it is about the deaf and the hearing, but really, as you said, it is about being an outsider because the deaf and the hearing world are very, very separated. And I really thought that now that there's caption TV and there's a relay service and there's all kinds of devices for the deaf, that the children would not feel that the way I did growing up. And it doesn't make any difference. I talked to an 88-year-old woman in California where I did my show who was a child of deaf adults. And yesterday I spoke to a guy in his 20s who was actually one of the understudies in Tribes who I had invited to the show. And he has deaf parents, and he said, it doesn't change. You are still an outsider. You are not part of your parents' world. It just doesn't work that way. So really, it's not just for us, but it is for anyone who grew up just not quite fitting in. It could be gay, or it could be too big. You could be too small. You could be the wrong color. I have a friend who's African American, and she said, I relate to it just as someone who can sometimes not be part of society and outside of it in sort of odd ways. And all of this can really make you feel excluded, and the sad thing is, can make you feel of very little value because everyone is one thing and you're just not. But we're all unique. We can all find our own voices, be happy with who you are. We take joy in that. That's what I want for the show, and that's what's been happening. People relate to it who have no connection with the deaf, but they know how it feels to be excluded. And they're really, hopefully, on that path toward accepting themselves and really living very full and very good lives. And I think it's helpful for them to know that there is someone here who really does hear them and is listening. And that's important to me.
Well, as you're talking about that, it's kind of making me think about, I don't think there is a person alive that hasn't felt at some point in time in their life excluded. I think about, children in school especially, when you hear about the bullying and, the exclusion from being part of this group or that group because of any number of reasons. There's so much exclusion in our society, more so than inclusion, for many different ways and reasons, and you see it. It's so prevalent, and so this show is definitely a show that can be a broad range identifier for so many people, and not just those who have hearing impaired parents, and which I think is got to be a helpful medium for so many.
Yes, that's really what this is going toward, and I think that is why Peter, my acting coach, really wanted me to do this, because it's really more about that. And the first few months that I was working with him, all I did was bring him in stories about my parents' difficulties and how difficult it was for them as deaf people in a hearing world. I would write essays about it, which I thought were totally brilliant. I thought they were insightful. I thought they were wonderful. And I would come in and give them to him, and he would say, very nice, dear. Now, what about you? Where's your story? Where's your story? And I kept doing it, and I finally think I just ran out of things to say, and I finally got it, and I said, all right. Let's do this. But it took a while because my whole orientation was toward them, because that's where theirs was. My mother's take on it always was, because I could hear, I had nothing to complain about. That was just bottom line. You can hear, you have nothing to cry about. That's it. You got no problems. You can hear. So standing on that side of it, it kind of doesn't have a lot of leeway over there. And you feel guilty, and you feel a lot of things. So the whole orientation, goes there. And doing this show, in particular for CODAs, for children of deaf adults, I would like to reach them. I had an email from a young man who was a senior in high school, and his parents are deaf, and he wrote to me and he said, I feel very alone, and I would really like to talk to you. We started talking. Well, we started emailing, because, of course, kids don't speak nowadays. They just email. And I kept telling him to call me, and he kept emailing. And finally, he emailed me, and he said, oh, my God, I'm in a sign language class, and the sign language teacher quit, and they put me in charge. Now what do I do? And I said, now you call me. Now you call me. This is the time. This is the time.
Yeah.
Now you call me. So we had a very nice conversation, and the associate principal invited me to come out to the school and do part of my show and answer questions afterwards.
Oh,
and the
wow.
questions they asked me really didn't have, I knew weren't for me. They were for him because they'd known him all their lives and he never talked about it. So it was really interesting.
Amazing.
I was kind of the go-between between him and me and the class, and it was very interesting.
Well, and as a whole, you were a great bridge because I imagine you helped answer some questions that were in the minds of his peers and help them to understand what he was going through a lot more than him just going it alone,
yes.
as he had felt, I'm sure, for so long. So kudos to you. I mean, what a great opportunity for you to be able to come in and share your story, but also your story had that power to bridge those gaps that obviously were not bridged beforehand.
Right. I was very happy to do that, and so was the associate principal because she was concerned about him. And she said he really needs to get out for a while. And kind of I was trying to do for him what Judy did for me, get him out of the house. And now he's spending a year in Israel, and I could not be more pleased for him.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And, your show is the kind of show that I think needs to be in every school in this country because, it is not just about, hearing impaired parents or children. It is about so many things. And so many of the prevalent issues, I think, that we face are in our schools with our youth and what they're dealing with day in, day out, because those are the people that are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. And how they are bridged and shaped today is going to make all the difference for how they will go out and exist in this world as we move forward. And although they can be some of the most resilient group of people out there, they also deal with a whole lot more than I did and you did when we were in school. It's just one of those things that is so important, I think. I would love to see that happen for you.
I would love to do that. I would love to do that. That's one of the goals that I have is to be able to do that, and speak on this because it's something that I have managed to be very open about, as I was not growing up, at all. Even to speaking in my parents' voices in the show it took a couple of my mentor and a workshop leader and a few other people to get me to do that because I didn't do it for a very long time. It was something you just didn't do. And the boy that I spoke to yesterday, the young man that I spoke to yesterday, I mentioned that to him, and he said he had the same problem. This is a guy in his 20s. This doesn't stop. So that's why I know that it's still relevant. It's still relevant. And again, it is a broader issue.
It is, and for you, when we think about it, I mean, regardless of your parents' circumstances, at the end of the day, they were still your parents that you respected, and you held to a high esteem, and to the mere thought of trying to emulate them and mimic their voices in this skit, I know had to be, for you, very difficult because for me it would be kind of a form of disrespect almost, and just trying to get your head around the whole concept of why you're doing it and in that way, to make it okay, I know had to have been tough. It would be for me incredibly so.
You really hit it exactly right. It's funny in all these years, nobody has nailed it the way you just did because that is what it felt like. It felt like a form of disrespect. And I just could not go there. Also, growing up with, my mother spoke very clearly. My father was very difficult to understand because his primary means of communication really was sign language. My mother spoke, told him what we were saying. We hoped she was doing that. I mean, who knows what she was doing, but we hoped she was doing that. But she, when I did try, to start that, my difficulty was that my mother sounded normal to me. I kept saying, but my mother doesn't have a deaf voice. Well, apparently, I am the only one on the planet who's ever heard my mother who thinks that. Because I spoke to a cousin of mine, and she said, no, your mother had a deaf voice. Even Peter met her once, and he said, no, your mother has a deaf voice. And I spoke to Judy, and she said, no, your mother has a deaf voice. So when a crowd of people tell you that, you think maybe they're right, and I just didn't hear it myself. So my father's voice is no problem for me, but hers, I thought I was exaggerating, And when Judy saw the show on Thursday, she said, "You nailed your mother. She sounded exactly like that." And that is just the most bizarre thing to me in the show, that has happened. I know that her being, her physical being, and her attitudes and everything else, that I feel like that was her. But the voice was a challenge. The voice was a challenge. It's starting to feel natural now, and now that everybody's telling me, yeah, that's right.
Isn't that amazing that you made that discovery out of, getting that feedback from your friends and family that had experienced this their whole lives of knowing your mom, yet you grew up amongst it, so it was just normal to you. It didn't feel like it was, a deaf voice, as they put it, so to speak.
Right.
And let's talk a little bit about that because, obviously this show has been built around this and has brought in so many other things that are important. But for you personally, how difficult was it growing up with deaf parents?
The odd thing is you don't, sorry.
I was just going to say maybe difficult's not the right word, challenging, I guess, because I'm sure it was more challenging than difficult.
The funny thing is you don't think about it growing up. It feels normal. It just feels like, well, this is, the way things are. Other children, and this is only something I noticed later, go out with their parents and they're introduced to an adult and, they kind of suck their thumb and shuffle their feet and hide behind mommy's skirt and peek out while mommy's talking to the adult. Well, I could not do that because I had to tell her what the adult was saying. So I had to stand there and listen to them and hear what they were saying and then turn around and tell it to my mother, which was a challenge because I couldn't sign. And it would have been a lot easier if I could have just quickly signed to my mother what they were saying. But I couldn't do that because I had to remember. See, I just had an insight, just a second. No wonder I have such a good memory. I have a very good memory because I had to remember what all these people were saying on the spot and then turn around and tell my mother what they said. It was like a little recording machine. I always wondered why I had such a good memory, and that must be why it was, because I couldn't do a simultaneous translation. I had to wait until they were finished because you can't talk while somebody's talking, but you can sign while someone's talking. That's how they are when you see them on TV when there's, interpreters. So the conversation sort of flows, but this sort of stopped, and then I would, tell my mother what I said. But that seemed normal to me. I didn't think at any point, I wish I could suck my thumb and hide behind my mother because I don't really want to talk to this person. It just never occurred to me. And we answered the phone when, little kids think monsters are coming through the phone. They don't answer the phone till they're like 10 and they're talking to their friends. But I did that all the time. And that's something I do in the show. My father was a builder, and the plumbers would call, and the plasterers and the painters and all these people. And they'd be yelling at me, and I'd be telling him, what they said, and then I would talk to them, and then they would yell at me, and then I would talk to him, and it would just go back and forth. So, but you don't think of it in those terms. And I remember as an adult being in a store and seeing a little kid have a tantrum on the floor, and I thought, gee, that looks like a lot of fun. I wish I could have done that. I'd like to do that. I'd like to lie on the floor and scream and have a little tantrum. That really seems this is like a really cool thing to do. No, we never did that.
Yeah. Well, for you, because it was just part of life growing up for you, and it seemed normal. That was your normal. Did you, in spite of that, did you feel as though you were the adult in the situation, even though your parents were your parents, but because you were having to mediate all the conversation between, whoever was communicating with them, but they were using you as that go-between. And like you just said, with the tantrum on the floor, did you ever feel like there was a part of you that just never got to be a real child, a real teenager, because you had such an adult role in your parents' lives?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, this doesn't really occur to you until you look back, quite a while later. You get a distance from it, and you realize that other children did not grow up this way. You look at these sitcoms on TV and the way the kids relate to the parents and say, gee, that really looks interesting. I could not, you couldn't, I don't want to say bad words on the radio in public, but my director said, "Did you ever say, something really bad to your mother? Like, see, I can't say that on the radio.
Yeah.
Just whatever, just go away or just, all things that people say." And I said, you have to understand something. If you say something like that to your parents, you basically say it while you're running, You can throw it over your shoulder and run and go slam the door to your bedroom. If you say that to a deaf person, you have to look straight at them, look them in the eye, and tell them what you're saying. You don't do it. You don't do it. Not if you want to live. You don't do that. It's really not smart.
Well,
my way of doing that, of course, was to write the play.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
and that's not why I wrote it, but
no, not at all. One of the things that I'm interested about, because you were, every day that you were in, the midst of dealing with being your parents' mediator, how were you able to find your own voice in the midst of growing up with deaf parents? Because I know probably the vast majority of the time, the communication you were having was as a medium between two other parties, your parents and whoever. But were you able to find your own voice in the midst of all that?
Well, I think what really helped me was going into acting, was going into theater. I think that was the thing that really was major for me, because I was this was in high school. Well, when I was very little, I took I had a little puppet thing, and I took it to school. And of course, I had always been, sitting in front of our little TV set and mouthing every word that was said to my parents. And one day I took this puppet to school, and I created a whole act for us. And I just thought, and I got to be the one on stage, talking and laughing and crying, which you can't laugh and cry and talk to deaf parents because they can't read your lips. You have to be really immobile. So to be able to do that on stage was great. I mean, I thought that was great. I still think that's great. And I was in a history class, and I was very political, and I thought I was, and I was arguing, and I was just an absolute pain in the butt. And the history teacher was smart enough. It's one of those unusually really, really smart people who knew that I didn't really care that much about the politics. What I loved was the drama. And instead of, saying, we should go into political science or something that really would have been completely horrible, he put me in the drama class. He said, "Why don't you go to the drama class?" I said, "That's a very good idea. I like that idea." And once I did that, that sort of lived with me, all through college, although I was studying history, because we were a lot of things were safe. Safe. That was safe. My mother's thing was safe. Eat chicken because it's safe. Study teaching because it's safe. And Judy made me eat lobster and stop eating chicken. And a guy that I was dating in graduate school said, "You don't really want to do this." I said, "No, I really don't." And he said, "What would you like to do?" And I said, "I would go, study art or study, go into theater." He says, "Why don't you take a year off and do that?" And I walked away, and I never went back. And that's really was my saving grace, was acting. Even though you are still talking for other people, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, I imagine you were able to express yourself in ways unlike ever before, and acting allowed you to do that. I mean, how freeing was that for you to be able to do that?
Yes, very. That was very, very important for me. And especially, doing this piece, having worked on this, but all through my acting, career, it became more and more, because when you grow up like this, you are really not a participant in life. You're an observer. I grew up to be an observer, and I had a vocal coach say that to me once. He said, "You're an observer. You stand kind of on the side and watch." And I said, "Yes, that's what I did." So this whole road has been to become more of a participant in life and not just an observer. To really join in, to be in the midst of it instead of watching it. And I think that's important. Go. Yes.
Oh, I was just going to say, you're one of the rare few that has been able to see life from both sides, as an observer and as a participant. And I think that's a great gift, because so many people only get to see one side or the other. and that's just a magnificent thing.
That's very good, because that is exactly right. It has actually made me a better actor, because I have watched a lot and I have observed a lot. So when I go into a role and I say, yes, I know both sides of this, because I've seen this. It also made me a good actor on stage, because the one thing that any director has never had to say to me is, look at the person who's speaking to you. I've had to be told not to look at them so much, but it's hard for me to not look at somebody when I'm talking to them.
Yeah.
But that has never been a problem, to make eye contact with my acting partner, to make eye contact with someone on stage. That's very natural for me, because that's the way we grew up. You had to look at somebody to have them understand you. Of course, later on I was told, you listen, you're an odd person. You listen very oddly. You stare. Most people don't stare. They sort of look away. They look down. You just stare. And I got kind of self-conscious about it, and I realized, I do. I do.
Well, I mean,
I'm paying attention.
That was what you knew, and that was normal for you. But it, it may be a little bit odd for someone who's not accustomed to having someone. I mean, by you doing that, you definitely gave them your undivided attention, because that was all you ever knew growing up, and that was your life for so long. And I mean, in this day and time, to have someone that could do that when we're speaking and give undivided attention, oh my gosh, I mean, that's, again, another rare thing in this day and time. So you've been blessed beyond measure. I mean, even though, having deaf parents, I know was not an ideal at times, being what you had to deal with. What a blessing, because it helped you, be able to see life in so many different ways, from so many different perspectives and sides, that the average person doesn't even get to, because they don't need to, or they don't pursue it,
Right. It is a unique perspective, and it has been helpful in very many ways. And now that I have sort of come into my own with this, I can sort of have a more rounded life, as I said, of really being more of a participant, but also having that other side where I can look, stand aside and see what's going on. It's absolutely true.
Well, I am just amazed by you and the fact of what you've been able to do, and now you turned this into an incredible show. And speaking of the show, as it wraps at the New York Fringe Festival on August 24th, can we expect to see it in future festivals similar to this moving forward into the fall?
Well, I'm going to see where we want to go next with this, because festivals are tricky. It's very rushed, and you don't quite have the, everything you'd like to have for it. So it would be nice to have a real run. What I'd really like, I mean, who wouldn't, is an off-Broadway run. That I'd like that, and I would like to travel with it. As you said, to bring it to the schools, to bring it to conferences, to educate. That would be ideal. Both of those things. And on top of that, I have been asked many times, where's the book? Where's the book? Where's the book? Where's the book? Book is in my head.
Definitely, I think a book needs to happen. It is the kind of story that needs to be told, because in addition to the play itself, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I think people need to hear. They need to see it. They need to read about it, because it is a great education module to, get people talking about, not just hearing impaired and what it's like to be on the outside, but just what it's like to be on the outside or excluded, period. It's a great conversation starter to get people talking about this issue, because it is an issue, and it looms large, and it is so prevalent in our society from so many different ways. So, yes, I look forward to you writing the book when that happens.
Well, I've got enough material now for War and Peace, so heaven knows I've got a lot of stuff. That kind of ended up on the cutting room floor. I was not going to put that in the book. And every time I took something out of the show, there was like, oh, I really wanted that in the show, but it doesn't really fit. I could comfort myself by saying, it'll go in the book. It's in the book.
There you go.
It's in the book. So it's okay. It's lying on the floor. It's in the book. It's okay.
Yeah. All is not lost. You'll find it one place or the other. There you go.
Yes.
Well, Gloria Rosen, thank you so very much for your time today and just talking with us about Listen, Can You Hear Me Now? I mean, it's a phenomenal show, and it goes beyond the bounds of hearing impairedness. And what a great thing this is for so many. And we just continue to wish you much success as it goes forward, be it at the New York Fringe Festival or elsewhere. We just look forward to seeing you all over the place with this, because I know it's going to be. So thank you again.
Well, thank you so very much for having me and for asking me things that no one has, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure, and I so enjoyed talking with you. And, hey, I'd love to have you back anytime, especially as you release this book. We definitely want to get that out there. And then if the show is going to be elsewhere, we'd love to help promote that and raise the awareness so that people can get out and see it.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you, and take care, and I'm sure we'll be in touch, and God bless you in all that you continue to do.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, you. Yeah, you, the one listening to this. Go to Stitcher.com and download the free app. It's a free app that lets you listen to our show 24/7, 365, anytime you'd like. You don't ever have to miss another episode again. And you can listen to thousands more shows and stations just like ours. So go now. Download it to your mobile devices, your Androids, your iPhones, your iPads, whatever you got. It's Stitcher.com, and it's free. Thanks for listening to tonight's show. You can connect to Behind the Mic Radio on Twitter at BT Mic Radio and on Facebook at Behind the Mic Radio. Check out our website at BehindTheMicRadio.com. Also, follow us right here on Blog Talk Radio, where you can stay up to date on all upcoming shows. Every episode is available for immediate download upon the conclusion of each broadcast, and as always on iTunes. Thank you for joining us.